ABC Listen. Podcasts, radio, news, music and more.
Hi, Erin Park here, host of the new ABC podcast Expanse, Nowhere Man. When a young American dumped his belongings and disappeared into the Great Sandy Desert, it triggered one of the biggest land searches Australia had ever seen. But there was one problem. How do you search for someone who doesn't want to be found? Join me for a story spanning 3 decades, 2 continents, and some very strange encounters as I try to understand why someone with everything to live for would plunge into one of Australia's most deadly landscapes. Subscribe to Expanse, Nowhere Man, on the ABC Listen app and all the usual places.
There are a few things less offensive than a wombat. Its unassuming squat features, its soft round nose, and the cute way it bumbles around slowly through the bush. But in one regional town, this furry marsupial has divided a community right down the middle, and it's turned once friendly neighbours into bitter opponents. I'm Thomas Ariti. This is the second episode of Beef, a background briefing series. Ty King's been at bush for this story. Hey, Titus, checking you didn't shoot anything for this story, did you?
No, Tom, I didn't shoot anything. I didn't even shoot photos because I can't.
Okay.
But the way I got into this story was by speaking to a wildlife carer named Diana Bissett. And the story she tells, it starts in the car. She's driving along and she's just seen a figure up ahead on the side of the road.
So I'm just driving along and I've seen a wombat and he's not quite off the road and he's in a funny position.
She's just outside a place called Taralga. It's about 250 clicks southwest of Sydney. And when she comes up alongside this wombat, she pulls off the road and she puts on her hazard lights.
So I stop, put my blinkers on and put a yellow hazmat vest thing on.
She's done this lots and lots of times. It's a roadkill hotspot. So she gets out of the car.
I'm walking up to it and I roll it over and just check that there's no joey in the pouch, and I just drag it off the road a bit more, and I like to leave them upside down so people realise it's dead because they don't die with their legs in the air.
So she's hunched over, right, on the side of the road, and she's huffing and puffing because they're bloody heavy, these wombats.
They are.
She's just dragged it off the road, gone through its pouch, and she sees something that she doesn't normally see.
There's blood on its head. It's not coming out of its ear. And when I get up there and just roll it a bit, I realise it's got a wound in behind the ear.
It's pretty obvious when a wombat's been hit by a car because they'll be squashed like a pancake. They'll be really, really banged up, or they'll be covered in blood. But this one, it just has this little speck behind the ear. So Diana investigates.
I stick my finger in it and realise how deep it is.
Oh, yikes. That's pretty gross, not for the faint-hearted, but to do that and to know to do that, she's obviously aware of these things. She knows what she's doing.
Yeah, she does. Diana's someone who lives deep in the bush, and so she's around wild animals all the time. There's foxes, there's all sorts of pests. And so when she's got a finger in this wound, she knows exactly what's caused it. A bullet. And she reckons a farmer fired it.
They're usually using a fairly high-powered rifle. You can't use a .22 from a distance. It's a really bony skull. You need to use something more powerful than that. And especially they won't get close to a wild wombat. It will be running away. So
they have to shoot it from long range?
A reasonable distance, yeah. And obviously he's shooting them and he'd rather than be bothered burying them that. They just drive along and fling them over the fence onto the edge of the road.
So why on earth are farmers killing wombats?
Well, first of all, we're talking about the common wombat. There's a couple of species of wombat. Okay. We're just talking about the common wombat. And it's not a threatened species. The population's pretty healthy, particularly out that way in the southern tablelands. And because of that, there's quite a lot of them around. And what they do is they dig these big burrows on the farmer's land. Essentially just big holes, and what it boils down to is that they cost farmers money. And so even though they're a pain, it's still illegal to kill them, except under some pretty rare circumstances. And Diana is determined to stop the farmers from doing it. And I mean, she's a wildlife carer, but she's not some sort of tree-hugging softie, from the city. She lives in the bush. She has her own guns. And I couldn't believe it, actually. Like, when you look at her, she looks like the sort of person who would be curled up on the couch with a book and a cup of tea. But she's tough. She's surprisingly tough. So at this moment, you see the wound, you put a finger in it and you realise what it is. What do you think then?
What do I think then? I think I'd like to toss it over the fence back.
Back into
the farmer's property.
And so this small act of Diana's, this willingness to try and save wombats, it's made her public enemy number one in a region that's heavily dominated by farmers. It's a conflict that at times has left her isolated, perplexed and confused, and even scared for her safety. She doesn't know why. Why do these people hate me? I'm just standing up for native animals. What do we got in the fire today? Because it's nice and warm in here.
We've got, that's a mixture, it's mostly stringy bark.
It's late morning and I'm sitting in front of a glowing fire with this old fella named Sterling Dixon. Who's this here at my knee?
Well, you've got a dog there called Bloss.
And this one?
That one's called Docker. Docker the Shocker.
Sterling's in his 70s. He's got this infectious laugh, very quick to smile, and he looks like he's been farming the land for decades.
Has he been? I mean,
he has, yeah.
He knows this land really well.
He knows it, but it's on his face too, like he's worn and sun-damaged, and he even sounds like he's kind of, had a tough life. And
he's weathered.
He's weathered,
yeah.
And he's the sort of guy that, if he walked into the pub, everybody there would know who he is and get up and say g'day and probably try buy him a beer, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
he's super popular. And so he's amazingly, actually, friends with Diana, the wombat carer, and with farmers who see wombats as vermin. So he's like...
That's a difficult balance, isn't it?
Yeah. But it gives him this unique insight into this conflict that's happening in the Southern Tablelands.
Right, so what's his take on all of it then?
He says it's a clash of cultures. So on the one side, you have people who aren't from Tauranga. They've moved out that way to retire or for a tree change, and they've got more progressive politics. And on the other side, you have the farmers who have lived there forever, for hundreds of years, some of them, their great-great-great-granddaddy's farm, that sort of stuff. And they're kind of stuck in their ways. So it's a conflict between those two groups, the wombat cuddlers and the wombat shooters, as Sterling describes them. And he says that in this area...
There's still a colonial mentality that prevails.
Colonial mentality? What does he mean by that?
He means it's the mindset of the Europeans who first came to Australia and just tried to dominate the landscape. And things that got in the way, or things that weren't useful or profitable, had to go.
So anything that didn't make your money got killed.
So we have farmers here now who see the wombat through that colonial lens.
Of course, yeah. Anything that threatens inconveniences your livelihood is an enemy.
So in comes Diana, the wildlife carer, and she is one of the out-of-towners, and she's got this different worldview. So she's moved to the area from Sydney.
I see.
But she's been there for, 15-odd years.
But she's still seen as a newbie to the people who've been there for generations.
You need, your grandfather buried in the local cemetery to be a local.
Or she'll always be a newbie. So you said they're friends. What did he tell you about Diana? How does he see Diana?
Diana's a person who's completely imbued with kindness towards animals. She just can't fathom that people behave like they do towards animals,
And Diana is coming into conflict with the colonial mentality, the prevailing view of the farmers who lived there. And so we're left with this real undercurrent of tension in Tauranga, which is just a small town. I think it's got 2 pubs and the general store, the rural supply shop. Yeah, that's right. Everyone knows everyone, yeah. And it's not quite open war, but there's serious hostility between the wombat cuddlers and the wombat shooters. And the other thing, Tom, that's important is that these farmers, according to Sterling, they're not afraid to throw their weight around and make themselves heard and protect their interests. And so he says, it's a case of you're between them and their money.
It's their sacred entitlement to make a living. regardless of the consequences. So it's just you're between them and the trough.
But Diana isn't afraid either to advance her cause.
Diane doesn't take a step back. She's full of courage.
She'll actually go out there and protect wombats from farmers, but also from pests like foxes and feral pigs and dogs, which she isn't afraid to shoot.
She's a deadly shot. She's super deadly.
Diana intrigues me. Why did she move to Taraga in the first place? Was it always tough for her to be there?
When she first moved there with her husband Warick in 2012, it was this lovely, accepting community.
I paint, I'm an artist, so I joined the art group and was involved with 16 art shows, helping them get going, on the committee.
She's doing paintings, she's got this big circle of friends, she's in the book club, she'd go out for tea and coffee with people. And one of the stories she told me that I found really interesting was that on election day, when they'd hand out the how to vote cards, it was just this really harmonious setting, which was completely different from Sydney, where she'd come from.
Going to vote, there'd be a card table and there'd be Greens, Labor and Liberal sitting around the card table, and people would come up to the card table and they'd just look at the right person, but most people knew who they wanted, whose leaflet they wanted. And if you wanted to go to the loo, I was surprised. I said, I'll just leave these here and people can take them. I said, no, we'll give them out.
The rival political fans.
Yeah. It was just so different from the city.
Oh, that's nice. I mean, it sounds like at least initially it wasn't tough for her to make that transition from the city.
No, she loved it. They couldn't believe it. Here was a town that was accepting of differences, where people helped each other. And so they sink their roots in and they build this beautiful house deep in the bush. It's all upcycled material. It's adjoining National Park, and they've got this big Queensland veranda that wraps around the house, and there's mobs of kangaroos there. They literally go up onto the veranda. I've been to a lot of houses in the bush, and this one was as nice as it gets. And, Warwick's got Parkinson's, and so they're thinking, beautiful town, harmonious, everyone's unified, there's not really any division. This is the perfect place to retire. So they were happy.
We call ourselves gently lost, especially when we get a full mist here, and we just go, we're gently lost.
And it lasts for a while. Things go well for a couple of years, but
once we started caring for the wombats, that when we're full-time, that sort of didn't go down too well.
It's just little things at first.
Taking shots at us on social media.
Name-calling.
We've been called hippies, super conservative Greens.
The wombat lady.
It's just like, it's a bit of a game. They pick on certain people. Because we're outsiders.
So this is her sort of first brush against this colonial mentality that Sterling mentioned. And that harmony in town that we talked about, that begins to fray a little bit. And Diana's like, that's all right, nothing's going to be perfect. So she sort of gets on with it, and she still sort of thinks, it's better than the city. At least I'm in a beautiful place.
Yeah.
But then there's this plan to upgrade the road that goes past her house.
To turn it into I imagine at the moment, if she's 20 k's out of town, it's a fairly quiet road. What are they trying to do to it?
Well, so this is a key part to this story. Like, to understand why this becomes an issue, you need to understand where she lives.
Yeah.
Diana and Warwick, they live off Wombian Caves Road. This road, it obviously goes to a place called Wombian Caves, and these are a tourist hotspot. They are beautiful, ancient caves, absolutely gorgeous. And they're one of Taraga's biggest draw cards.
And they want to expand the road to allow more tourists to get in there.
Yes, exactly. Make it safer, make it wider, straighten some of the curves, flatten some of the hills.
Okay.
And so all the small businesses really in Taraga, they rely on this road. They rely on tourists coming through to visit the caves. It's not the lifeblood, because I guess farming is, but it is the...
It brings people to the community. It gives them
tens of thousands every year.
That tourist dollar. Yeah, I've heard of the caves, absolutely.
Yeah, and so the council, they get some funding and they decide to make it safer. And Diana stumbles across this construction work as it's happening.
So I'm driving out to go to Taraga, and I've been to Taraga 3 days earlier. And I come around the corner and I look up the hill and I go, what?
And she's sitting in the car, and through her window she can see this place she loves being destroyed.
They've gone from fence to fence, I've got gliders from this era, greater gliders that are endangered, and there is a great big 20-tonne excavator smashing the trees into big piles.
And so she thinks, well, hold on, there's been no community consultation about this.
What are they doing? And this 20-tonne machine is just picking up big bits of tree, putting it in a pile and just closing the claws and just smashing it up, just smashing it.
She says that her days of standing in front of bulldozers are over.
Because that was my next question.
Yeah,
Did you go and stand in front of the bulldozer? No. Okay.
She didn't. But she does pull up alongside the guy who's in the bulldozer and ask him what's going on. The guy explains that they're doing this road upgrade, that it's all approved by council, they've got the relevant permissions, yada, 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 all that stuff.
Yeah.
But she knows, well, there's special animals in this habitat where it's being destroyed.
It's wombat, it's endangered Rosenberg goannas, there's 2 endangered microbats, there's the endangered yellow-bellied glider and the greater glider.
So she calls the council and gets hold of the environmental report, the thing that says what they can and can't do.
Okay.
She organises a meeting with the council. It's called Upper Lachlan Shire Council. But while she's waiting for that to happen, her and her husband are out there sort of marking wombat burrows and various other...
And the work's still going on,
and the work's still going on at this point.
Yeah.
And what really pisses her off is that the workers bulldoze a wombat burrow that she'd clearly marked.
That was a really provocative thing to do.
The council later apologises and says it was an accident, but the destroyed burrow is what tips Diana over the edge.
I can imagine.
It makes her really mad. And so she gets in touch with an ecologist, shows him the environmental report, and this ecologist kind of agrees with her. And so they go to the council with their issue, and the council says, all right, we'll pause it, we'll take a look at it.
Okay, so take it seriously.
Yeah, and we asked them as well, about consultation, about the width of the road and the clearing and the wombat burrow.
Okay.
They didn't answer specific questions, but said they complied with all relevant environmental legislation and processes, and that at that point, no further consultation was deemed necessary.
Okay, so what's the status of the road now?
Well, that depends who you ask. The council says it's done, that 6 kilometres was upgraded in 2 stages, but the town, both sides of the beef, they say that only 3 kilometres was upgraded to the standard promised.
3 kilometres done.
And so
now, I imagine that didn't go down well with everyone.
It doesn't. And remember, Wombat Caves is the town's big draw card, and so the town sees it as this crazy environmentalist
who stopped the entire road project.
Yeah, prioritising wombat lives over the town's economic health and security.
So suddenly I can imagine, setting aside everything about shooting the wombats, she doesn't become popular on the streets of this town when they realise it's her that stopped it.
Yeah, that's right. And she's labelled, and Warick, her husband, they're labelled reckless greenies. And it's not just the farmers now who are pissed at her. So, they're blamed for costing the town jobs, costing the town money.
Yeah, I had some lovely people post on the local community Facebook to not serve me in town, and it was pretty disgusting. And they were completely going off half-cocked, this whole group of people.
And just to illustrate how serious this was, someone in town made a change.org petition to, get the upgrade going again. And I looked at the description. I tried to speak to the guy, but he didn't want to go on the record. But his description, which is still online, says, the Wombat Caves road upgrade has been stalled by a minority group of ecological activists. Don't let this minority group have so much power. And so Diana and Warick are blamed. This harmonious town that was fraying a little bit before when she became known as a wombat carer, it splits, I would say. And then Diana stops attending this art group that she loved. Even going to holiday events in town becomes an issue.
I was doing some face painting because someone couldn't do it at a Christmas event, and I had kids being dragged off my queue and put on the other queue because I was doing it.
How did she feel about all that?
I mean, she's devastated, and it gets worse, actually. Take, for example, even election days, which just a few years earlier, people would hand out each other's how to vote cards. That's ours. And she hears people make jokes at her expense.
They've got beers in their hands and they're joking, the dolphins are caught on the telegraph poles. And it took me a bit to sort of go, what are they talking about?
It was actually some kind of laboured joke about lefties and rising sea levels and climate change, and it was targeted at her. At its worst, it even went beyond name-calling.
I've had a screwdriver, for want of a better word, through the side of my tyres in town.
So this is getting serious. She's on an isolated property. She must have been worried.
Yeah, she was worried, and I sort of said to her, I was like, I bet you didn't think like this little thing standing up for native animals would spiral out of control like this.
No, we didn't expect the reactions we've got, and we know they blow them up. We know they bulldoze them. It's very sad, and I sort of sometimes wish that, I wish I'd been in a town that wasn't so back in the 50s.
So this perfect little retirement zone that Diana and Warick found, it kind of crumbles, but she's not ready to give up. And so what she does is she sort of turns to education. And so now she's making these calendars about wombats and why they're good and some unique things about them and how to deal with them. And she's posting tips on her social media page, which is quite popular. Diana's trying to educate, to, I guess, erode this colonial mentality. But from my experience there, it's not working. Like, I stayed at the pub, right? Spend a few nights there. And if you ask people about wombats, you'd hear that they're a problem and that they get shot, that people kill them. It's an open secret, put it that way. They don't want to admit it. They won't admit it to me, a journalist, because it's illegal without a permit. The maximum prison time is 5 years and it's a $22,000 fine.
Wow.
So
because they're a native animal.
That's right. Yeah. And, someone told me that if you get in the right circles, people will just talk about it. They'll talk about methods and where to shoot them and stuff like that.
If they feel they're in the right company.
Yeah, that's right. And I spoke to a fella who said it's quite common for farmers to swerve off the road and hit one if they think their car is strong enough or the wombat's small enough.
Yeah. Well, whoops. Oh, well, there's another one gone.
And you will see, driving along, tyre marks veer off the tarmac onto the grass.
Deliberately.
And according to Diana...
The suggestion is deliberately.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And so I tried to talk to all these people. I even drove around to some of the places where Diana believed farmers were shooting wombats. No one would speak to me, but I did manage to speak to some farmers about wombats in general and why they see them as a problem. G'day, Chris.
How are you, Ty?
Good. Thanks for having us, mate.
It's no worries. Welcome to the country.
First guy I meet is a bloke named Chris Croker. He's a wool and beef farmer based a little bit outside Taralga, and his family have been farming in the area for around 200 years. And I'll be up front here, he has never given Diana any grief, and he says he doesn't kill wombats.
Okay, follow me.
Chris, he was a hospitable bloke, that sort of old look you in the eye, shake your hands, g'day mate, welcome here, welcome out here.
Yeah.
I'm going to take you around.
They want to show off, they're proud of it.
Yeah, and they are. And he sort of organises a bit of a tour of his property to show me some of the issues with wombats. So we make our way down the bottom of his block.
This is the back of his property now, would it be?
Yeah, it looks like we're cutting back towards his. It's hundreds of acres, and I'm in my ute and he's in a Hilux ahead of me, and we're just following him along. And like straight away, it's bloody freezing, by the way, this morning. And like straight away, he does this real wide turn as we're descending down this paddock, and it's caught me off guard.
Oh, there's that. That's what he's dodging.
And I was like, what's he doing? Like, why is he driving this erratically?
Yeah.
And anyway, we pull up and we look back up the hill, what we've dodged, and there's this bloody big wombat burrow.
We could have ran over that if you didn't know.
Yeah, well, that's what sort of happens. We'll start to dig sometimes, and then that collapsed, all right? And so it sort of filled in, and you come down there on the bike, and bang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that happening.
Yeah. You're riding across there. It's pretty hard to see it either way anyway, and if you were to hit it with any sort of pace...
A two-wheeler you've got.
Well, a four-wheeler, you could roll it on top of yourself.
Yeah.
And, so...
So that's just one thing he shows me, and it's actually not what he wanted to show me. He wants to show me this creek at the bottom of the property. So we keep heading down towards this creek, and we stop as we're going through this fence. He sort of gets out of the car and he's like, Ty, look at that, look at that, look at that.
Something's got in?
Yeah.
And I look over to the side, and there's this mesh fence that's had a hole busted in it.
That's started by a wombat, that hole there.
So it's lifted up the mesh of the fence.
Yeah, it's lifted up the mesh on the fence.
So I ask him, what's the problem with that?
Well, it's annoying, you know. The next thing that comes through there will be pigs or kangaroos, etc., and your fence gets worse and worse.
So we keep heading down, and eventually it gets really rough, and we have to go into four-wheel drive as we're going across these paddocks, and we're going through gates, and these lambs, they keep following the cars, and Chris says,
Keep following the cars?
Yeah, he thinks, because normally when he drives down that way, they're getting fed. And anyway, we get down to the bottom of the property. It's this place called Blade of Grass Creek, and Chris starts pointing at all these collapsed burrows, and there are dozens of them on the edge of this creek bed, and it's collapsing the land, or eroding the land into the water.
So what happens, we go in there, wombat gets washed out, he starts getting water in there, he'll get out, go away, water recedes, and he'll dig another hole, but that'll be washed out and the erosion happens, okay? So that's what's happened on this bank here, right along here.
So just more holes every time it rains.
More holes. When you get a flood, water goes in there and they come out. So this has been going on here, for 20 years, but that has eroded in the last 15 years back up to there.
And he points to a spot about 20 metres from where it used to be.
All right? And a lot of it is from continually punching holes. If I came and did that with a tractor, I'd have the EPA after me. What are you doing digging in a waterway?
The EPA is the Environment Protection Agency. And Chris says without serious intervention, this creek will eventually become a gully.
I've tried to find funding to help repair this, and there's been none available. I had one quote on it, which was about $250,000 about 7 years ago.
Wow, it's pretty hefty.
Yeah, and it's money he doesn't have.
Yeah, so it's clear wombats cause damage, right? That's undisputable.
Undisputable, and Diana acknowledges it.
So what does Chris want to do with the wombats on his property?
So here's the thing. If you jump through enough hoops, you can get a permit to cull some wombats. But Chris and other farmers said it's a painful process to do. By the time you get it done, the wombat's already caused you problems, and it's too late by that point. And so what I put it to Chris, I said, what should happen? And he just said flat out, well, it should be farmers' discretion.
Some don't like to shoot them. Some will shoot them if they have to. I think that's it. But to think that they're just a cute, cuddly animal is a fantasy. They really need to allow the farmers to do what they have to do.
That sounds pretty open-ended and ominous, as in kill them.
Yeah, that's what he means, that farmers should be able to kill wombats at their own discretion.
There's a feed station up the top which will maybe be still in the sun.
Yeah, if we can do that, yeah.
Yeah, okay, well, we'll walk around the back.
So I'm back at Diana's property, and it's this lovely winter afternoon.
I've fallen through the deck. It's been repaired yesterday.
And she wants to show me some of the solutions that she hopes farmers adopt.
So we're just going down to show you the original wombat gate that we installed in a fence that the wombats use. Just down here in this fence line. It's just there. So this is a simple gate that's been made out of found materials on any farm.
So we're looking at a mesh fence which has this little wooden square on it.
Bits of star posts, bits of metal and some odds and sods bits of wood. So it's not expensive, quick and easy to make.
It's essentially like a doggy door, but it's wooden for a wombat.
That's correct.
Diana says the wooden flap is just heavy enough to deter the animals farmers don't want in their land, that farmers have problems with.
We're finding these wombat gates, foxes don't go through them, dogs don't go through them, pigs don't go through them, and for the farmer, baby lambs will not go through them. So it's going to keep their lambs safe.
And so that's the sort of thing that she wants the farmers to do. So I go back to Chris Croker, this farmer. And remember, when we were driving around on his tour, he showed me that fence that had been busted up by a wombat.
Yeah.
And I put it to Chris.
Just put the WOM door in there.
And I say, what about this?
Yeah, that's a good idea, but have you ever tried to talk to a wombat and say, can you go through that door, please?
Yeah, I'll just go a few hundred metres down there to use the door. So you have to put a door in every square metre of fence. Yeah, okay, look, okay, you can see his point.
Well, it might sound a bit airy-fairy, Tom, but Diana says you can actually get wombats to use them.
We just put a stick under it to have it open a little bit for a couple of nights, and the wombats will push through it and they'll get the hang of it.
So it's a clash of ideas, you know.
Are those ideas of hers getting any traction, though, or are they seen as a bit airy-fairy?
They're seen as naive, as coming from the city with people who don't understand what life is like on the land.
Mm.
I'm not saying all ideas are stupid, but sometimes some things are just sort of you sit back and you think about the practicality of it, and it just doesn't work for a business that we're trying to run here.
So it gets late in the afternoon and we head up to a structure that Diana and Warick call the wombatorium.
We're going up onto the hill.
Yep.
There's a big release wombatorium. That's got a nice wombat door in it.
Oh, so when you've nursed a wombat back to health, you will take it up
or
here?
let it raise, yes. And so it's in this wombatorium up here. And we've got 3 living there at the moment.
At the start of the story, when she found that wombat with the bullet hole, if that had had a joey in its pouch, that joey would have ended up in the wombatorium.
Oh, that's why she checked the joey at the start, the pouch at the start, right? Because if there was a joey in there, could have still been alive. She would have taken it back.
Yeah, but this is one of the strongest points of contention in this story.
I wanted to ask you about that. She nurses them to health. You've got to do something with them then. Where does she put them?
Well, you're not allowed to put them in a national park, and Diana says she puts them as far from farms as possible. But Chris reckons it's impossible to control where they'll end up.
There's no rules on where they let them go. That's wrong in itself, and there's no control about that. Fine if they want to go and, help the injured wildlife or whatever, but yeah, that's they should be putting them back in areas that they come from, not in some other foreign area and just spreading the problem for everyone else.
And I think the best way to summarise this point of view from the farmer is a story that one of the ecologists I spoke to told me. He said, at the end of the day, from the point of view of a farmer, a bullet costs $1 and a gunshot takes 1 second.
As opposed to thousands of dollars fixing fences.
Yeah, or filling in burrows or trapping a wombat to relocate it, which you have to do at night. You have to set up a trap. They can get through metal traps. They're so strong. So it's like, I don't see a solution, Tom.
That's what I was going to ask. What's the way out of this beef? Is there one? At the sort of face value, in my view, listening to this, I don't see how they're ever going to agree.
No, that's a fair assessment. Everybody seems to agree to disagree. What have we got here?
Yeah, that's a mum and last year's joey just floating around because the grass is quite yummy below the deck here. Less competition, they feel a bit safer.
Diana and I are out on the veranda and these kangaroos are foraging for dinner just beneath us.
The last slide on the hill here is just amazing, just catching the top. It's just got a lovely orangey golden glow.
This is where she likes to finish her day. And really, I can't blame her.
It's just nice just to sit and just breathe in deeply and feel gently lost, as we are.
But despite the the beauty, this colonial mentality and this lack of a solution is wearing her down and Warick down.
We're running out of steam, so everyone can be happy about that.
She says she's contemplated leaving.
It's gotten that bad.
Yeah. But they can't really. They're too heavily invested in the block. Like, they've done all this work, fireproofed it, it's immaculate. And to do all that again in another place at their age with Warick's illness, it wouldn't work.
How did she feel talking to you about all this? Was she nervous at all? Was she emotional?
She was reluctant to talk about this. Everybody was. Diana particularly didn't want to ruffle feathers. She's like a lone island surrounded by, these people who see wombats completely different to her and who are willing to, make her life difficult.
People don't want to be seen to be getting the wombat lovers to help them.
But she's going to continue doing her work. It seems as tough as it's getting, it's strengthened her resolve.
Yeah. She says she'll continue to do her part.
We're here to stay. We're doing our thing out here, and if the town, is rejecting us to a degree, well, we'll just keep doing what we're doing here.
In the next episode of Beef, the story of a 71-year-old pensioner risking everything in a bitter court battle with one of the biggest banks in Australia.
If I lose the fight with the bank, they can hit me with millions of dollars of legal costs and bankrupt me. But what the hell? That's the principle of the thing.
That's next time on Beef. Background Briefing sound producers are Lila Schunner and Ingrid Wagner. Sound engineering by John Jacobs. Theme composition by Hamish Camilleri. Fact-checking by Imogen Tyndale. The rollout producer is Ben Sveen. The supervising producer is Alex Mann. The executive producer is Fanu Falali. And the reporter on this story, Tynan King. And I'm Thomas O'Reilly. You can subscribe to Background Briefing on the ABC Listen app. Thanks for listening.